Before you hear this story, pause for just 1 second. Have you ever lived through a moment that never showed up in photos? Never made it onto social media? Never got explained to anyone afterward? But somehow became one of the most important memories of your life? If you've ever had a moment like that, where nothing wrong happened, but everything inside you changed, then subscribe to this channel now, because this story isn't about scandal. It isn't about shock. It's about that fragile, dangerous, beautiful space where connection becomes undeniable. And once you step into this moment with me, you won't be able to walk back out unchanged. I still remember the second the atmosphere shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like the air itself decided to hold its breath. We were already inside the East Wing restroom, the one no one used unless they had to. Old building, bad lighting, always smelled faintly of soap and dust and time. The kind of place people pass through quickly without thinking. That day, 11 of us walked in together, and none of us left the same. The door closed with a soft, final click. That sound, small as it was, cut us off from the rest of the campus. Outside, life kept moving. Voices drifted faintly through the walls. Someone laughed somewhere far away. A door slammed. Shoes scraped concrete. Inside, everything slowed. White tiles, once bright, now chipped and tired, reflected the harsh overhead lights. One of the sinks dripped steadily, metal against porcelain. Counting seconds, none of us were tracking anymore. We stood close. Too close to pretend it was accidental. 11 bodies sharing a space never meant for more than 2 or 3. The air warmed almost immediately. Breaths overlapped, arms brushed, shoulders touched and didn't pull away. No one spoke. And that silence. It wasn't awkward. It was expectant. Alex was the first to move. Not fast, not boldly, deliberately. His hand found mine like it had done 1,000 times before. Crossing campus, sitting in lectures, standing in lines. But this time was different. Slower, more aware. His fingers traced the back of my knuckles, unhurried, as if memorizing something he already knew by heart. My palm turned upward without me consciously deciding to do it. An invitation. His hand settled into mine, warm and steady. When his thumb brushed the center of my palm, just once, something fluttered violently in my chest. Not fear, not surprise. Recognition. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. Around us, the energy changed. Conversations that had been echoing just minutes earlier vanished completely. Laughter disappeared like it had never existed. Jordan shifted closer on my left, his shoulder pressing into mine. Solid. Grounding. I could feel the rhythm of his breathing syncing with my own. 1. On my right, Liam reached for my other hand. His fingers were cooler, longer. When they laced with mine, I felt the faint tremor running through them. Nervous. Wanting. The same things I was feeling. None of this came out of nowhere. That's the part people never understand. We were seniors. Final year. 21, 22. Standing at the edge of adulthood with one foot still stubbornly planted in this strange, suspended world called college. 10 men who had somehow become more than classmates. More than friends. They were the ones who stayed up with me until sunrise, arguing about poetry and purpose, and whether love was a choice or a collision. They were the ones who carried my books when my arms were full. Who noticed when I was quiet. Who sent me terrible memes at 3 a.m. just to make sure I was still smiling. And I knew them too. I knew Ethan rubbed the back of his neck when anxiety crept in. I knew Caleb hummed when he was happy. Never loud, just enough to feel. I knew the exact shade Jordan's eyes turned when he looked at me for too long. We had never named what existed between us. We didn't need to. It lived in lingering hugs, in hands resting on my back a second longer than necessary, in conversations that dipped just below safe territory and hovered there. Consent was never a question. It was woven into every glance, Every pause, every almost spoken word. We all knew. We all wanted. Noah leaned in from behind me. I felt his presence before I felt his touch. The warmth of his chest. The careful way he moved as if giving me every chance to pull away. Then his lips brushed the side of my neck. Not claiming, not demanding. Reverent. They lingered just long enough for me to feel his breath against my skin. When he pulled back, the heat remained like an echo. That was the moment I knew. We weren't leaving this room as the same people. 8:45. The question without words. Alex lifted my hand, the one still joined with his, and brought it toward his mouth. He didn't kiss it like a movie scene. He pressed his lips to the inside of my wrist, right where my pulse was hammering loud enough to betray me. His eyes never left mine. They asked a question he didn't need words for. I answered with the smallest nod. Yes. Movement rippled through the room. Not rushed, never rushed. Like everyone had imagined this moment separately and somehow arrived at the same conclusion together. Jordan stepped closer, 2 fingers beneath my chin. Gentle. Guiding. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Time stretched, and just before his lips touched mine, I realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. This wasn't about desire. This was about being seen. And once that door opens, it never fully closes again. Because the kiss that followed, the first one, wasn't the moment everything changed. It was only the beginning. The kiss didn't arrive all at once. It hovered. To Jordan's face was close enough that I could see the faint freckle near his jaw, the way his breath hitched slightly as if he was steadying himself. His fingers under my chin weren't holding me in place. They were offering direction, waiting for permission to continue. Time fractured. There was the sound of the dripping sink, the hum of the lights overhead, the distant echo of footsteps outside the door. And then there was us. When his lips finally met mine, it wasn't hungry. It wasn't urgent. It was soft, exploratory. Like a question asked carefully in case the answer might hurt. I answered by leaning in. That was all it took. The room exhaled. Not literally, but emotionally. Something unknotted in the air. Something that had been held tight for years without any of us realizing it. The tension didn't disappear. It transformed. Jordan pulled back slowly, forehead resting against mine for a brief second longer than necessary. His thumb traced the line of my jaw once, grounding himself as much as me. I could feel everyone watching, not in a way that felt invasive, but attentive, protective, like witnesses to something fragile. Liam stepped closer next. He didn't rush to claim space. He waited until my gaze found his. His eyes were softer than usual, vulnerability plain on his face. When he kissed me, it was slower still, reverent in a way that made my chest ache. He cradled my face like I might disappear if he let go too quickly. And in that moment, I realized something quietly profound. No one here was trying to take anything from me. They were offering themselves. Each person brought something different into the circle. Miguel hovered just close enough that his warmth brushed my arm. When he leaned in, his kiss landed at the corner of my mouth, then my cheek. Soft, almost shy. He murmured something under his breath that only I could hear. Something about gratitude, about being here, about not wanting to rush what felt sacred. Ethan didn't kiss me right away. Instead, he pressed his forehead to mine and stayed there. His eyes closed, his breath shaky. When his lips finally brushed my temple, it felt like a promise rather than a spark. Noah returned to my neck. Not lingering this time, just grounding. His arms slipped around my waist loosely from behind, not confining. Just present. Like he was reminding me I wasn't alone in this. Caleb took my hand, the same one he'd held through countless late-night conversations, and kissed each fingertip slowly, deliberately, like he was committing the sensation to memory. Dylan's kiss behind my ear made me shiver. Not because it was intense, but because it was playful in that quiet way he always had. Familiar, comforting. Sebastian caught my eye across the room, that crooked smile flashing for just a second before he leaned in and kissed me fully. Confident, warm, grounded. Tyler didn't kiss my lips at all. 3. He wrapped his arms around me from the side, rested his face against my hair, and kissed the crown of my head. Again and again, steady as a heartbeat. And somehow none of it felt overwhelming. It felt held. Hands became the real conversation, fingers threading gently through mine. Palms resting against my arms, my shoulders, my back. Someone brushing hair from my forehead with a tenderness that made my throat tighten. A thumb traced slow circles inside my elbow. Another hand rested over my heart, feeling it race. Someone squeezed my hand once. Just once. As if to say, I'm here. Every touch asked, every pause waited. And my answers came not in words, but in stillness. In leaning closer. In not pulling away. Yes. 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 Eventually, gravity reclaimed us. We slid down the wall slowly, backs against the cool tile, knees bending, legs tangling naturally. The floor was cold, but the circle we formed was warm. I ended up leaning back against Alex's chest, his arms looped loosely around me, not holding tight. Just anchoring. Jordan stretched out beside me, resting his head on my thigh, and looking up at me like the world had narrowed to this small shared space. Liam mirrored him on the other side, our fingers still laced together like they had been at the beginning. Only now, steadier. The others arranged themselves around us, close enough that no one was outside the circle. Close enough that I could hear 10 different heartbeats blending with my own. We didn't talk about classes, or deadlines, or the future in abstract terms. We talked about real things. Miguel spoke first. About the letter his mother sent. How she said she was proud of him, even though he hadn't called in weeks. How he'd cried in the shower so no one would hear. Ethan shared a poem he'd never shown anyone. His voice shook by the last line, and when he finished, no one rushed to speak. We let the silence honor it. Noah admitted he was terrified of leaving campus, of losing the version of himself that existed only here, with us. Caleb sang part of a song he'd written, soft, half-whispered, about a girl with storm cloud eyes and 10 boys who loved her anyway. I cried then, quietly, not from sadness, from being known. They held me tighter without a word. Hours passed without us noticing. Sometimes there were kisses, soft, lazy, unhurried. Sometimes there were just foreheads resting together. Sometimes I kissed whoever was closest. Cheek, jaw, corner of mouth. Nothing was rushed. Nothing felt stolen. The light outside shifted from harsh afternoon brightness to something softer. Golden, then amber, then dusky. The sharp edge of longing softened into something deeper, something that felt like home. Eventually, the room grew quieter again. Not tense, reflective. And somewhere in that quiet, I realized something else. This moment wasn't meant to last forever, but it was meant to last inside us. Because soon, the door would open again, and what we'd carry out with us mattered more than what we'd left behind. At some point, time stopped behaving normally, not in a dramatic way. There was no sudden realization, no clear marker, but it loosened its grip on us. Minutes stretched, hours folded into each other. The idea of schedules, obligations, and tomorrow blurred until it felt irrelevant. The restroom no longer felt like a restroom. It felt like a pocket carved out of reality. A place the world had forgotten to check on. The harsh fluorescent lights no longer felt harsh. The chipped tiles no longer looked tired. Even the steady drip of the sink softened into a rhythm, like a heartbeat reminding us that time still existed. Just not for us. We were still sitting on the floor, still close, still touching in small, grounding ways. No one wanted to be the first to move. There's a difference between silence that feels awkward and silence that feels safe. This was the second kind. The kind where no one feels pressure to fill the space, where presence alone is enough, where breathing together becomes conversation. Alex's arms around me had relaxed into something instinctive, not protective, not possessive, just there, like they had always belonged there. Jordan absent-mindedly traced slow patterns on my thigh as he talked about nothing and everything at once, his voice calm, almost dreamy. Liam's fingers still threaded with mine, occasionally tightening just enough to remind me he was still there. Every so often, someone would shift, adjust, settle again. No one pulled away. Miguel spoke again, not loudly, not to the group at first, just honestly. He talked about how he'd spent most of his life trying to be the version of himself everyone else needed. The good son, the reliable friend, the one who didn't ask for too much. He admitted he was afraid that once college ended, he'd disappear into responsibility and never quite feel this alive again. No one interrupted. Ethan followed, surprising all of us. He admitted how often he felt like he was standing on the outside of his own life, observing instead of participating, writing poems no one saw, loving quietly, wanting deeply but fearing rejection more. When his voice broke, he didn't apologize. He didn't have to. Someone reached for his hand, then another, and suddenly he wasn't alone in the feeling anymore. Noah confessed something that sat heavy in the room for a moment. He said he was scared of how much this place, and these people, had become his identity, that he didn't know who he was without us. Without the shared meals, the late nights, the inside jokes, the quiet understanding. I don't know how to be this version of me anywhere else, he said. The honesty in his voice did something to all of us, because we understood. Caleb laughed softly after that, not to dismiss it, but to survive it. He talked about how music had always been his way of saying things he didn't know how to explain out loud. How writing that song, about a girl with storm cloud eyes and too many boys who loved her, had felt safer than admitting the truth directly. His fingers tapped invisible strings against his leg as he sang a few quiet lines again. This time, no one teased him. We let the song exist. Eventually, all eyes turned to me, not expectant, inviting. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding everything in until that moment. I told them how it felt to be the center of so much care without ever feeling objectified. How rare that was. How precious. How terrifying it sometimes felt to matter so much. I admitted I was afraid of forgetting this version of myself, the one who felt brave enough to be fully present, fully open, fully real. Tears slipped down my face before I could stop them. They didn't rush to fix it. They didn't tell me not to cry. They just held me closer. And in that moment, I felt something settle deep in my chest. A certainty that whatever happened after this, I would never again doubt my worth. After that, the energy shifted again. Not away from intimacy, but into something softer. Kisses became rarer, slower, more deliberate. Touches lingered longer but carried less urgency. A hand resting on a shoulder. A head leaning against another. Someone brushed my hair absent-mindedly. Someone else rested their cheek against my knee. Alex pressed a kiss to my temple. Not because he needed to, but because it felt right. It wasn't about desire anymore. It was about closeness, about comfort, about belonging. At some point, laughter found its way back in. Quiet at first, then freer. Jordan made a comment about how if anyone walked in right now, there would be no explanation sufficient enough. Dylan joked about how this was definitely not covered in the student handbook. Even in laughter, no one broke the circle. We laughed because we felt safe enough to. Someone noticed the light changing. Golden tones filtered faintly through the small window high on the wall. Afternoon had given way to evening without asking our permission. The realization landed gently. We had been here a long time. Long enough for something permanent to form. No one panicked. No one rushed to stand. We let the moment finish being itself. Eventually, the conversation slowed. Breathing deepened. Eyes grew heavier, not from exhaustion, but from fullness. And somewhere